So IGN just put out maybe their worst Sonic review ever to date. And before people jump on me in the comments, no, it's not because
lay low number.
Because it got a 7, which is actually a decent rating in my opinion. However, the way reviewer Jade Griffin talked about this game with downright factually wrong points made makes me wonder if we even played the same game.
But even when I took the highest routes, I didn't feel the speed I've come to expect over the past 30 years of Sonic.
So, as someone who's played and beaten Sonic Superstars already, thanks to my local mom and pop shop, I want to dive in and look at this from a more objective lens, and as someone who's beaten it, I can show you just all the things that make this review utter waffling nonsense. Now, there's going to be no spoilers in this video, however, I'm going to be blurring out and not showing a part of IGN's review that I you not contains the second final boss that you fight after beating the entire game again in a secret news story, as well as showing Trip without her helmet when this review was put out almost a week before the game's even released. Which, if that isn't bad enough, the only reason they bothered to show this was because the point they made up couldn't be backed up with any other footage because it's nonsensical and frankly not true in any other part of the game. So no, today I'm not gonna bootlick Sega, nor am I pressured to, since I made the choice this time around to not request anything from anyone at Sega to make sure I maintain my lack of bias and don't get a little too tempted to start licking their boots. Something I'm seeing a lot in recent times. In fact, I actually went into this game thinking I would hate it with it being a 2.5D Sonic game, which with Sonic 4 being what it is and the classic Sonic stages and forces, can you really blame me? That said, the release game is surprisingly great, and while it definitely has some negative aspects I'll acknowledge and cover, IGN must be an opposite world because the few negatives in this game are their only positive takeaways. I'm not even kidding. So I want to go over this review in particular because whether you love or hate Superstars, it doesn't matter because oh mama, this is bad. However, first, do you like games with cute kawaii pocket monsters? Well, look no further because today's video is sponsored by Pocket Champs. And what is that, you might be asking? Pocket Champs is a fun, free-to-download racing game on both iOS and Android. And in this game, you can train your own champ, an adorable little character who will run for you in a race that requires skill and strategies to train your champ to become the best it can be. That way, it can run, swim, and climb to first place. Strategize the best way to win the race by analyzing the world and picking out the perfect gadgets so that your champ can make it to the top. After all of that, you get to sit back and watch your champ race. In this game, you're able to collect tons of different rewards, choose between a bunch of cool character designs, compete against other coaches on the leaderboard, and enjoy all the unique landscape your champ will get to race in. So what are you waiting for? Use my link in the description below, specifically mine, or scan this QR code to download the game. And even better, for a limited time only, when you use my link or QR code, you'll get 500 gems and the White Wolf skin. And that's what I call my buddy, the White Wolf. Everything will automatically be added to your account on November 1st, and the offer is only good until October 31st, and it's worth $15. So claim it by clicking the link or scanning the QR code while you still can. So download the game ASAP, and thank you Pocket Champs, as it supports me a lot, and I'm literally living inside of a Denny's dumpster. Now, let's get into the reviews, because after beating this game, I can safely say, while Superstars isn't perfect or gonna win the world's greatest game ever award, I surprisingly really liked it, and for a variety of reasons. This might even be one of my favorite classic Sonic games ever, keyword classic. And with the unique features this game has that no other classic games have, I think will make this age like wine. But this isn't the Sonic Show review, just a little context before going in. But let's hear what IGN has to say, as they are the experts and professional reviewers. And it's not like they're gonna have any abysmally garbage takes on this game or anything like that.
I didn't feel the speed I've come to expect over the past 30 years of Sonic. Most Sonic games put the pedal to the metal, but Sonic Superstars trades the traditional breakneck pace for new Chaos Emerald abilities, a larger focus on exploration, and slightly more challenging bosses.
This is a very odd opening because not only is Sonic Superstars one of the fastest Sonic games out there, but it's also one of the very few with basically zero tricky platforms that make you redo huge sections of acts. And yes, I'm talking to you, Chemical Plant Zone. Not only are you going way faster here than before, but also these are, with only a couple exceptions, some of the easiest Sonic bosses across all the classic games in Mania. Almost every single one of these I was able to beat first try, and if anyone has ever watched my Sonic Origins streams, you'll know I'm absolutely terrible, awful at classic Sonic, so I imagine fans will not be struggling for the most part.
That stylistic shift works well for the majority of Superstars, as a slightly different flavor of Sonic can be fun, I couldn't help but feel like it was missing the main thing I love about the series: speed.
The biggest stylistic shift is 2.5D graphics, something I took a while to get used to, but other than that, I wouldn't call this a huge shift from classic Sonic. In fact, one of the biggest complaints I'm hearing is that the multiplayer, which this game is based around, is too fast and chaotic with 4 people, something I've only been able to play with 2 people since it's local only and I really only have Kayla here to play with me.
And I enjoyed that each one has a cool quirk with it. One is a giant snake burrowing throughout the level that gives you a slight bounce when moving along it, while another has patches of thick fog that obscure your vision.
Now, I also loved all the new gimmicks each zone has that makes it feel unique from other Sonic games. However, the smoke vision gimmick where it follows whoever is holding the butterfly completely gets ruined in multiplayer, as only one person at a time can have the visible spot, making this the one level I'd recommend dropping out and just doing single player on. Now, despite IGN praising it, this is a design flaw, and it would have been so simple to just have it go around all the players there, but instead you just have to sit around while whoever got the butterfly first continues alone.
I also really enjoyed Lagoon City, which felt like a giant water theme park and made the best use of the new water power granted by one of the Chaos Emeralds.
And boy, wooey, are there bad takes everywhere, because I don't know why they went out of their way to praise this level, as there's one single water level in this game, and while it's not a terrible level, it's by far not a standout. And while I love the vibe of the level, the aesthetic, I'm sorry, but how can you praise the water level? What is wrong with you?
There are multiple routes to take in each level. The higher you ascend, the faster the route, while the lower routes focus even more on the platforming side. At first, it was fun to explore those lower routes using different playable characters and the various Chaos Emerald powers to explore their less streamlined paths for secrets, but after discovering my only reward for that exploration was either more rings or a currency used on cosmetics in the lackluster multiplayer battle mode, there wasn't much incentive to try and navigate the extra hazards and enemies.
Yes, that's the point. The bottom route, like you described, is the slowest, and the whole point of these games is the better you get and learn the routes, you can stay on the top, which is harder to maintain, but has by far the fastest paths to the level. That's basically your reward for memorizing the level and having super fast reflexes.
It wasn't until after the 15 hours I spent clearing all the story content that I was able to go back and start to find more efficient routes in order to get a better feeling of that speed. Still, that doesn't help the fact that everything feels a bit too slow out the gate for your first playthrough.
Which, yes, I'm glad you now understand the point of these games, hence why all classic Sonic games have such short campaigns that speedrunners love to fly through. And to make this game have better value, they included the second story and a bonus secret ending, which of course I'm not going to talk about in this video, no spoilers, but keep in mind, they are saying this right next to gameplay of them flying through the level. What the fuck?
Bullet became extremely helpful when playing as Sonic specifically too, as he lacks the extra movement options you get when you play as Tails, Knuckles, or Amy.
And Amy has a double jump, which I understand, but Tails has flying and Knuckles has gliding. But do they not realize Sonic has exclusive movement too? Are you aware the other characters don't have the drop dash, something incredibly useful in this game? For a while in my playthrough, I switched to Amy, and while the hammer attack is actually really nice, and I do like the double jump, when it came to bosses, the trade-off just wasn't worth it for the drop dash, at least in my opinion.
But gone are the days of constantly bouncing to destroy them quickly. Long sections of them being untargetable as you wait to counter specific attacks can mean bosses often outstay their welcome, as they sometimes double or triple the completion time of a stage.
The bosses are really easy, and while a handful are difficult, it's true, yes, almost all of these you can't beat in 5 seconds exactly. And I don't know if the comments are going to agree with me on this, but I like that personally. I don't feel rewarded for walking up to a boss, hitting him instantly, and literally clearing the thing in 20 seconds. However, the tenseness and stress of fighting a boss for just 2 to 3 minutes is something I really liked. I actually think these might be some of the best bosses across any classic game. Some of them, like a Fang one later on in your first playthrough, definitely overstays its welcome, and I can understand the want for shorter bosses. But again, after beating each one, I felt really accomplished and satisfied, and I think making them significantly shorter and less tense takes away from that accomplishment and satisfaction.
Meanwhile, Fang might have some of the most challenging boss fights in any Sonic game, with small vulnerability windows to take damage, multiple phases, and numerous one-hit kill attacks that ignore your collection of rings.
Now, this one pictured is not the one that will give you trouble. In fact, it's so easy. He just shoots a laser in the same spot and you have to jump over it for like 3 times with no variation. This one, it was so easy. And the way they used fights plural makes me hope they didn't actually struggle with the super easy, don't hit the laser, just press A fight. Literally all you have to do is hold right and press A.
This started as a welcome difficulty spike, but became flat out frustrating after fights started to drag on and on.
Now, ironically, the Fang fight that does suck is only bad because it drags on, and by drags on, I mean this boss can go for like 7 or 8 minutes. It's insane. And not only that, but it has a couple objects that are really hard to predict and will take your rings, and then you'll immediately get hit by something else, making you go through the entire 4 to 8 minutes again. One thing I actually really liked about Superstars is there's very few attacks that are just going to one-hit kill you, which generally feels cheap and I just hate. So I'm really happy to see a lack of that.
Thankfully, you'll still be able to enjoy Superstar's phenomenal soundtrack as you fight them, with music that matches the theme of each stage perfectly. I couldn't find one that didn't have me tapping my toes to their percussive and electronic beats.
What?
Nearly every track, with a special shout out to Lagoon City Act 2, had me replaying their stages just to idle and listen to their music.
Now, what the actual is this your idea of banger foot tapping music? Listen, even when Sonic games are bad, their soundtracks are still great. And you guys have probably seen a lot of the rhetoric online, but the reception of Sonic Superstar's soundtrack has been anything but great. And while there are definitely some tracks that are gonna make you go insane, hurt your ears, give you extremely dark thoughts about your future, but for the most part, I just thought the soundtrack was okay. It was alright. I wasn't deeply offended like some people were. But also, there's very few to no experiences where you're gonna go,
dude, this might be one of the best Sonic songs I've ever heard.
Which is a huge disappointment since it's been 6 years since we got a Sonic game with T. Lopes' music, who we all agree is super amazing. But even T. Lopes being brought in just could not save Jun Sonoi's composing. And I love Jun Sonoi. He's a legendary guitarist. He has some amazing compositions, but oh man, this is just so insanely bad. Even the Gaming Bolt agrees.
Instead, Sonic Superstar soundtrack feels bland and uninspired, like an imitation of what someone thinks Sonic music should sound like.
I don't want to be one to gatekeep, but June, put down your audio workstation and pick up the guitar.
Superstars also includes 4-player drop-in, drop-out local co-op, but as great as this sounds, it could be better in its execution. The experience is clever at its best and frustrating at its worst, as the camera doesn't seem to have any rhyme or reason for who it decides to follow.
It quite literally follows whoever's in ahead, and you can instantly spawn back with the exact momentum of whoever's in first, which is a great way to make an entire full Sonic game work with multiplayer without breaking into stretched or minuscule windows that take away from the experience, which I know a lot of people do want that. But personally, after playing the offline battle mode and seeing how small these screens are, and these are just side little mini games, yeah, I do not want this for the full game, and frankly, I don't want to get left behind in the dust. If I'm playing with a friend who's way better than me, I kind of want to have fun and just be able to press A and be next to them. This is like little brother mode, but for when your little brother gets old enough to realize the controller's not on, he's not playing, and even if they are playing his Tails, let's be real, playing his Tails in classic Sonic, you're not actually playing, you're just there. My favorite part about this is even if the person you're playing with is awful, which I'm not going to point fingers, but Kayla may or may not be awful at Sonic games, then you can just run ahead like normal and complete the level, with whoever does go further taking the lead of the camera. It's zoomed out a little bit so it doesn't look close up, which would make platforming and keeping up impossible, but it's not zoomed out too much that it's hard to see the character with them being a little lands on the screen. The only time I've ran into any significant camera issues is multiplayer on boss fight, and particularly ones where you're spinning around the boss as there's no clear ahead or behind, so the camera sometimes doesn't know who to go to.
Sometimes it would track me as Sonic as I sped past my co-op partner playing Knuckles, while other times it would allow me to run off the screen while he climbed a wall. This type of thing was a constant occurrence.
Again, the camera quite literally goes to whoever's further progressed. How is this not blatantly obvious to every single person who's played this game? I mean, you did play this game with local multiplayer, right? It'd be kind of weird to review a co-op based multiplayer Sonic game, having not played the multiplayer or co-op.
The worst offender, though, is one of the later bosses that can capture you in an electric web, and if you fail to break free via button mashing, it hits you with a one-hit KO move.
Okay, IGN for showing this, because I blurred it out, but they not only showed the last boss of the main game, and in reference to something that's entirely unrelated, because the boss they're talking about doesn't one-hit KO you, but regardless, they showed the alternate version at the end of what's essentially this game's encore mode that unlocks after you beat the main game. So to get to this boss, you have to beat that too. That's right, making you complete the game 2 times. Granted, with different layouts and slightly different bosses. Yet, the game is not even out, and you put Trip helmetless in the final boss in the review? Beyond scummy. Now, the worst part is I believe they only showed this because while it's quite literally the second to last thing you'll do in this entire game, it's one of the first instant kill attacks a boss does, and other than the final boss of the main game, it's the only one that's even moderately difficult, which, to be fair, I'm fine with. Of course it's difficult. It's literally the New Game Plus final boss. And also, granted, not the final thing. There's a little secret surprise after that.
As for the 8-player battle mode, everyone but the most die-hard Sonic fans will probably abandon it as soon as they finish their first match. You and up to 7 others create a robot based on a variety of animals and Sonic characters to compete in 3 random minigames across various maps, which are equally simple and only mildly entertaining at best.
Now, there's 2 scenarios here. This person, A, either doesn't have friends, or B, hates them, because this was actually really good. Granted, playing with 6 AI and 2 people certainly isn't the most fun, but playing across the fun little bonus minigames and objectives with a handful of friends is really fun, and I think this will have a way longer lasting impact in the community than anything else in recent years. We now have a pretty alright competitive multiplayer and co-op in an official setting, which we've never had before. So I can see this game having an extremely long lifespan and active community, which, with how unique and fun all the little minigame modes are, I'm also really excited to play and stream this with some Sonic Tuber friends. Everyone knows Sonic fans love Sonic, and now we can officially play it together. I feel like the reviewer would understand this if they did play with a handful of friends and not just 2 people versus 6 robots. What?
It opens a portal that takes you into the classic Sonic minigame, where you must maneuver around the inside of a rotating set of blocks to reach the goal. These were fun initially, but as they began to repeat themselves, I started avoiding them sometimes during the first campaign, and then almost every time in the second, because they just slowed the pacing of the stage down even further.
Now, everyone I've talked to has said original Sonic 1 special stages are downright awful, abysmal, trash, something I'm sorry to say, but I agree with. But this one, rather, is actually pretty decent, and I had a lot of fun. Plus, it's not copy-paste or the same, and the difficulty ramps up with them as you progress. I don't know how the reviewer is not getting this. I've done every one I can find, and I haven't had almost any repeats at all. Now, I might have once because the layout seemed somewhat similar, but I actually don't even think it was a repeat. So I really have no clue what Jade is talking about.
Unfortunately, the sound design isn't up to the same standard. I don't know who thought listening to this for minutes on end was a good idea. I ended up muting my TV at times to keep myself from getting a splitting headache.
Now, I'll give it to them. There is maybe 1 or 2 annoying sound effects in this game, and her example is the making a clink sound when it hits the metal. Something that doesn't bother me too much because that's the sound metal makes when it hits metal, especially with how short the fight was. Like, I can guarantee that entire fight was less than 2 minutes.
The soundtrack features some excellent additions to an already long list of Sonic bangers. If only the sound design was up to the same quality standard.
However, there are some valid complaints I have about the sound design that don't get brought up in the review at all. Now, it's not awful. They did do it with Origins as well. But guys, just make new menu sounds. So many of the sounds in this game are taken directly from Mania, which are fine. They're not like terrible sounds. They're totally applicable. But it doesn't quite scratch that itch of like a whole brand new experience. And while I personally don't mind something small like menu sound effects, I have heard this get brought up a lot, so I do think it's a fair point. Now, the music, on the other hand, I genuinely think T-Lope should testify in Congress about what happened here, because I don't know how he didn't at any point gather the courage to tell June.
Listen, buddy, this is some of the worst I've ever heard ever. Why don't you let me take over, bud? I'm T-Lopes. I make good music.
Sonic Mania's soundtrack was good. Even Shredder's Revenge soundtrack was good, so I know he hasn't lost it. But I do think maybe there's too many cooks in the kitchen.
And while the campaign is still enjoyable, Superstar's multiplayer components are far worse options than anything in the past Sonic games.
There's no multiplayer options in past Sonic games, so I don't even know what they mean. Are you referring to the secret where the second controller could control Tails on Sonic 2? In which they couldn't die and had no real usage as they kept falling off screen? Which is way too boring for anyone that's, sorry to offend you guys, not a child. I don't even know how you could call that a better attempt at multiplayer. What the f? No, not only do I think this is easily the best way multiplayer could be done in a Sonic game, but I actually would really recommend playing it with some IRL friends to give it a shot. Even ones who aren't into or any good at Sonic games at all. They'll still be able to keep up with the range of different ways to play that help lesser experienced players along.
Sonic Superstars' new ideas end up feeling like a mix of both interesting and ill-advised, making it an amusing Sonic game, but not exactly a super one.
And again, a 7 isn't a bad score from IGN. I think it's actually pretty good. But the reasonings they gave were just catastrophically bad, and some just not even factually true, as well as them having spoilers from extremely late in the game, like right before the very last mission across all modes. And while IGN, I acknowledge, is the Sonic community's global punching bag, this review really is genuinely awful. And I can't stand when people say,
It's IGN. Why would we care?
not only is IGN the most popular gaming review website, but they're also basically a household name and the most influential. When they drop absolute dog like this, I do think it's fair to hold them accountable and not be like, this review is not the number I like, but instead go, you made dog untrue points, you showed spoilers that weren't even relevant and you didn't have to show, and seemingly don't understand going fast in a Sonic game. Like, it's Sonic. That's like The Flash makes a game and you're like, ugh, you're really moving quick with this guy, huh? Okay. Lots covered. I think I'm gonna put up my own review in a couple days. As you can tell, I like the game though. But it would be nice to be able to talk about the spoilers. And like if you like. Double check you're subbed. YouTube do be undoing that. Check out Pocket Champs. It's free and supports me. If enough of you download it, I can get more brand deals. But that's all for today. Lots of love and peace. Peace!
Time back, yeah, I'm never better. Sonic show back and I've never been better. Little raccoon and he's getting cheddar. Little raccoon that made me so cheddar. I'm whipping leaves, yeah, I'm getting lettuce. I'm whipping leaves and I'm getting cheddar. I delete tweets so I can feel better. I'm making peace so I can be